Hello, Meteor.
Hello, Meteor.
Have you heard about the website called discovery.com?
Discovery.com is my guidebook for life. I learned how to plant an herb garden, train my dog, and cure my dandruff.
I learned that most meteors burn up in Earth's atmosphere. Ah! The atmosphere! Ah!
The atmosphere! Ah!
Welcome to Short Planetary Geological Essays, narrated by Daniel Hutchinson. In 1980, scientist Carl Sagan presented a 13-episode series called Cosmos, A Personal Voyage, on television. Towards the end of the second episode, Sagan displays a large glass vessel filled with a substance he claims is the beginnings of life that he made within his own personal laboratory. Let's use science as a way of critical thinking and ask the question, did Sagan really do so, like he claims in one of his episodes from the Cosmos series? A year before Sagan's Cosmos program, he published an article in the science journal called Nature. This journal is one of the most prestigious science journals on the planet. The reason being that only a small fraction of scientists in the world get the honor of publishing their work within it. Within Sagan's article, he summarized the combined results of many of his experiments that he personally performed within over a decade on the subject of the origin of life. What was found that is represented in Sagan's Cosmos series seems to be the exact opposite of what is in his summarized article in the Nature journal, published a year earlier, of his combined experiments on the subject of the origin of life. Now let me be clear on this matter. This is a very serious charge with far-reaching implications. I wish to make it abundantly clear that I have a love for Sagan's work on his Cosmos series, regarding many parts of its content that it holds. So, with that out of the way, let us move forward. Sagan states within his Cosmos series, "Now how did the molecules of life arise? In a laboratory at Cornell University, we mix together the gases and waters of the primitive Earth, supply some energy, and see if we can make the stuff of life." Carl Sagan. So the question is, did Sagan actually make the stuff of life? Looking into the Nature Journal article he personally wrote will give us the answer. On page 102, volume 277, dated 11 January 1979, it states, "For the past decade, we have been producing in our laboratory a complex of organic solids from the mixtures of the cosmically abundant gases methane, ethane, ammonia, water, formaldehyde, and hydrogen sulfide." Carl Sagan. Sagan started with common gases and applied various common sources of energy along with a large number of related experiments that formed complex organic solids. So, the most important question here is, what were these solids? Were they an assortment of molecules usable in the advancement towards producing life? Within Sagan's Cosmos series, he dramatically claims this to be the case. But within the Nature journal, Sagan stated, "This product synthesized by ultraviolet UV light or spark discharge is a brown, sometimes sticky residue, which has been called, because of its resistance to conventional analytical chemistry, intractable polymer." Carl Sagan. In translation, this intractable polymer has become so complex and unreactive that it cannot be analyzed using conventional chemistry. It is effectively inert, useless. It cannot do anything or be used in anything. And it is most certainly not amino acids freely joining together to form proteins. Such is what is needed for life to appear. The intractable polymer is a haphazard collection of molecules bound together so firmly that the bonds cannot be broken, even by extremely strong and aggressive chemicals. The energy used in Sagan's experiment breaks apart and ionizes the molecules present. randomly recombining to form a haphazard assortment of new molecules. The new molecules continue to be ripped apart. Then they randomly combine into yet newer, sometimes larger and more complex molecules. As this process is repeated, extremely large molecules occasionally appear. At a certain point, these larger molecules become so large and their subcomponents so tightly bound together that no acid, base, or organic solvent is capable of reacting with them. They become permanently inert, useless, as mentioned before. Except they can be ionized, not to be taken apart, but to only increase to a greater size. This is the characteristics of natural prebiotic processes in general. It is so characteristic in what has commonly appeared in other experiments that it has already been given a name, intractable polymer. It is important to realize that this intractable polymer is not a freak accident in the making. Sagan made mention within his article in the Nature journal that the famous Urey-Miller experiment produced similar intractable polymers. Therefore, it would seem that Sagan has not improved any on the prior Urey-Miller experiment results. Even if proteins were made, they would only be available temporarily before they as well would become inert along with the intractable polymer. There is a short transition time between when the initial gases would start making molecules and when they formed the intractable polymer. Sometimes amino acids appear during this interval. These amino acids might form small proteins, only to inevitably to end up within the intractable polymer. Sagan himself hinted to this on page 103 of his article in the Nature journal. So, even if the peptide bonds had formed, the resultant product would end up within the intractable polymer. An intractable polymer is a granular assortment of giant molecules incapable of participating in normal chemical reactions. Intractable polymer formation and biogenesis research still to this day continues to be a problem. It is therefore difficult to understand how any kind of evolutionary process might have begun. Again, whatever gets formed, no matter how useful it might potentially be, still ends up within the intractable polymer. Most importantly, general evolution is dependent upon success at this stage. Unless the intractable polymer problem can be overcome, the specific natural phenomena of intractable polymerization, it will continue to thwart the natural origin of life. Logic dictates that if there is no initial life forms produced within the experiment, then there will never be any small cells to evolve into higher forms of life, such as plants and animals. Going the route of producing intractable polymers within the laboratory results in the halting of the entire evolutionary structure before it even starts. A number of potential solutions to this well-known problem have been offered within the scientific literature for years, meaning that the intractable polymer problem has been well known within the scientific community for years. The scientific philosophy of today's scientists implies that natural processes should lead to a natural origin of life. However, Sagan's experimental data when it comes to intractable polymerization seems to contradict this and never getting any further. Let us not forget that unbiased science consistently, forcefully, never contradicts the materialistic understanding of reality. To be fair, the present scientific contributions briefly reviews and evaluates some of the more promising possibilities of the creation of life in a laboratory. But if that's the case, why hasn't any specific cases come to light to be presented on television like Sagan's clearly contradictory claim? I personally believe that the solution to the intractable polymerization problem is very likely something within the scientific community that has not been thought of as of yet. Back again to Sagan's Cosmos television program, he states, "The starting gases are now introduced into a large reaction vessel. We can shine ultraviolet light into this mixture, simulating the early sun, but in this experiment the gases will be sparked. After only a few hours, the interior of the reaction vessel becomes streaked with a strange brown pigment, a rich collection of complex organic molecules, including the building blocks of the proteins and nucleic acids. Under the right conditions, these building blocks assemble themselves into molecules of little proteins and little nucleic acids. These nucleic acids even can make copies of themselves. In this vessel are the notes of the music of life, although not yet the music itself." Carl Sagan. Sincerely, with all due respect, it would seem that the only thing produced on Sagan's Cosmos and his laboratory was emotional fervor along with the background music both working hand in hand making Sagan's statements dramatic and impressive. For reasons I have no idea why, Sagan seems to present a false conclusion of his life-producing experiment as both emotionally satisfying and intellectually stimulating. It would seem Sagan wanted his experiments to do the things he claimed. He dedicated over a decade of his life because of this wanting, in an attempt to make it a reality. Clearly in his heart, he was hoping that the breakthrough was just around the corner. But the breakthrough never came. Based on up to today, it still hasn't. There is a big difference in claiming your desired experimental results as opposed to achieving them. It takes about 200 nucleotides to produce a molecule of RNA, which can copy a RNA template within any accuracy. The copying process is so slow and RNA falls apart so rapidly that an RNA molecule breaks into pieces before it can copy a template to make itself. Even today, this is a major problem amongst scientists attempting from demonstrating successful RNA replication. So if scientists today cannot achieve RNA replication in the laboratory, Sagan certainly did not do so in 1979. In conclusion, when you supply disorganized energy to a set of chemicals previously listed, you end up with intractable polymerization. One could repeat this experiment for 4.5 billion years and still end up with the same results. Therefore, we must ask the question with a scientific critical thinking mindset. What does one within the scientific community base the statement on, given enough time, life is inevitable?